What's up, guys? Let's talk about the 4-day upper lower split. This is one of my favorite ways for the post-novice lifter to continue to progress. Okay, why choose a 4-day upper lower split? A lot of people who do it have came off the kind of a 3-day NLP. Maybe they've done a heavy, light, medium, but they're running into a couple problems. Number one is we need to spread the stress out as an intermediate lifter. No longer can you really make those linear jumps. And the second thing is on the tail end of an NLP or a heavy, light, medium, Texas method type split, you're looking at grueling, long sessions. So, a lot of guys are doing like a squat, bench, deadlift, and it's taking them 2 hours in their hot garage in the middle of the summer, and they're hating their life, and they're getting to this spot where it doesn't feel like the juice is worth the squeeze. Enter the 4-day upper lower split. Now, I always like to joke with people, like my biggest job as a starting strength coach is getting people through that starting strength as efficiently, as quickly as possible, and then getting them into something that's more flexible and sustainable long-term. And this is one of my favorite ways to do it, okay? So with the 4-day upper lower split, here's essentially like the overall arching theme is we are now, instead of having 3 training days, hitting 3 big lifts per session, squatting 3 times a week. We're doing some type of pulling 3 times a week with the deadlifts, chins, or rows, power cleans, light deadlifts, whatever it is that you're doing. And then pressing, alternating the presses. So you're pressing twice a week and you're benching once a week, and then you're benching twice a week and pressing once a week. So what happens with the 4-day split is now each main movement has a focus day, so what I would like to call a heavy day, and then a light day as well. So now you're getting an exposure to each lift weekly 2 times, okay? So this is a really good way of spreading out the stress in the training, and man, do people get relieved when they've came off like a 3-day heavy split where they've been just busting their ass on it and they get to do something like this. So I'm gonna preface this to say that when I say heavy and when I say light, I don't necessarily mean the weight on the bar. What I mean by that is the amount of stress, okay? So keep that in mind as I go ahead and talk about this. So as you'll see in a 4-day upper lower split, each day has a focus day. So like your first day of the week would be a heavy bench day, okay? Which means pretty high intensity with enough volume to be enough stress. And then on day 2 is a heavy squat day. Same thing. Heavy, high intensity with enough reps to get the stress we need. And then we have a heavy press day, okay? And then a heavy deadlift day, and I just put the light squat in front of it because a lot of guys use the light squat as a warm-up to the heavy deadlift. So that can change though as you go throughout the training. So, the best part about a 4-day split is really its simplicity. It's like, me now do the main lifts 2 times a week somehow. Really simple to follow, right? You don't have to think about this too hard. As long as you can get a heavy version of each lift and a light version of each lift and some accessories in over the course of the week, and then progress the weight up over time on all of it, you're gonna make a lot of progress, right? The other thing about it is how adaptable it is, not only from like a scheduling perspective, but just based on your ever-changing goals, okay? A lot of people can use this type of setup immediately post-novice where they're still doing maybe like weekly progression on weights. It can even be fairly linear, right? As well as all the way down to like a power lifter running this conjugate type method, or if you're maybe more hypertrophy focused and you want to do a lot more accessory work while still building top end strength, you can do that power building approach. But this 4-day upper lower shell matches all of those, and you can just kind of plug and play what the goal is that you're wanting to accomplish, right? So let's talk about different ways that people would progress something like this, okay? I have started a lot of lifters when I'm in the consultation process with them, and we're looking at their schedule and we're looking at what they can recover from. And I will straight up say, maybe they even came to me that they wanted to run the NLP. And I will straight up say, you know what? you just based on your schedule, we can't run an NLP. Like, it's just not going to work. It's not going to be effective. Let's get you right into something that's more sustainable. Is this going to be as optimal as the NLP, doing it the way you should? No, but you can run this fairly linear. I've had multiple cases where I've started out with a lifter doing, 3x5 bench, 3x5 press, 3x5 squat, 1x5 deadlift, 3x5 press, 3x5 bench, 3x5 squat, 1x5 deadlift, and we add 5 pounds to those each time. And then pretty soon you have to throw out one of the heavy deadlifts. So then you do a power clean for your light pulling day or your light deadlift day, and you're still progressing your squats, 5 pounds each session. So instead of taking 3 5-pound jumps like you do in the NLP, you just take 2 each week, and that's still a ton of progress. So this can be ran very basic and linear and simple if you're a newer lifter. Or if you consult with a guy like me and we determine, hey, your form isn't good, we got a lot of stuff to work on, let's dial the loads back a bunch, but still keep you in this upper-lower split, but we're gonna run it linear for a while. So that's one of the first common ways of doing this, and eventually you kind of get into a spot where that stops working because you're running 3x5 twice a week. That doesn't last very long. So pretty soon you need to do a volume and intensity split. So for that heavy and light. So I'll have a lot of guys doing something like heavy bench here is, one heavy set of 5 and a back off, or maybe it transfers into triples, doubles, singles and stuff. With a volume press, this could be a 3 to 4 to 5x5. Even go up to 5 to 8 reps. And then a heavy squat day, again, it's 1 to 3 sets of 1 to 5 reps in that range, pushing the weight up. With a light deadlift, this is where there's a ton of options here on the light deadlift day. You can do power cleans you probably should try them. A lot of guys do deficit deadlifts, RDLs, floating cocaine deadlifts. It's a decent day to put some sumos in. Rack pulls can fit in there on that light day. Anything that's less stressful overall in the pulling, and you keep that purposely light. Then we have a heavy press day. 1 to 3 by 1 to 5, it works pretty well. The heavy press day responds well to a ton of heavy singles, heavy doubles, so don't be afraid to do 8 to 10 heavy singles in a day on the press, followed by a light bench where, again, you can tap into variations. Close grip bench, Spotto, all the different bench variations. You can slap that in there. And then have a light squat day. This is where we get into a lot of things like pause squats, tempo squats. Maybe if you've been doing months and months of low bar squats, it's time to add in a high bar squat, the Mars bar, something along those lines to grease the groove before you do a heavy deadlift. And the main principle there is, over time, we just want to get 5 to 10 hard reps. After that linear progress runs out, 5 to 10 hard reps, however you got to do that. That can be a heavy set of 5 and a back off. That can be 3 triples. That can be, any various numbers of rep schemes you do there, but just stick with them and try to progress that deadlift up over time, right? So that's kind of the more intermediate way of doing it. Things like rep cycling works out really awesome. Everybody knows like the 5-3-1, Wendler 5-3-1. That works awesome on these heavy days. You could do a 5. 5 is 1 week, 3 is 1 week, 1's the next week, and then you reset. I definitely don't think you really need like the deload thing in there. If you're familiar with 8-5-2, this is like the Kingwood strength method by Andy Baker. It is one of my favorite rep cycling ways of doing it, where you're hitting over the course of 3 weeks, heavy sets of 8, heavy sets of 5, and then heavy doubles. And you run that out over a weekly. So, you can have a bench day, squat day, heavy press day, and everything is 3 sets of 8. The heavy deadlift can be 1 set of 8, and then the next week it's 3 sets of 5, and then the next week it's 3 doubles. And that allows you to hit a broad assortment of rep ranges over the course of 3 weeks. Keeps it fresh instead of just like grinding heavy 5s for weeks and weeks on end. So that works really well. And you can even, if you do an 8-5-2, you could easily do like a 6-4-2 or like a 6-4-1. In fact, when it comes to rep cycling, you could literally do something like this. If you are the type of guy who can train for like 8 weeks straight, 9 weeks straight without missing, heavy sets of 5, 3, 1. The following week you could do like, the following cycle you could do 8, 5, 2. The following cycle you could do 6, 4, 2, and then reset it back. Again, you could do the 5, 3, 1 while you can recover from it for 3 weeks. Eventually that runs out. So there's different ways to cycle your reps, but the overarching theme is just push the weights up over time and milk the simple stuff. So you can also do stuff like more of a bodybuilding type split or a hypertrophy focused split, where you want to work the top end strength, but you also want to get some hypertrophy work in. So a way to do that could be like, you could have your bench day, but instead of like barbell press, while there's an argument to be made that getting your barbell overhead press up is going to help a lot, things like seated dumbbell press are awesome for the shoulders. Even things like hammer strength shoulder press machines. I've got some guys that'll do like a heavy bench and then a machine based pressing and then the rest of their accessory work. Same thing, like, you could do like your heavy squats and then some type of lighter pulling. You could do a heavy press and then heavy overhead press with the barbell here, and then the light bench could be the machine seated bench press, like the hammer strength one that does really, really well. So you can definitely alter this type of structure, especially as you go later on in your training career. Early on, stick to the barbell stuff. Get your barbell stuff strong. Milk that for all that's worth, because when it comes time to transition into, rep cycling or the hypertrophy type split on this or the conjugate type split on this, you're going to have a lot bigger motor when it comes to doing that, right? So let's talk like some common questions. Assistance work. What do I do for assistance work? Basically, think about it like this. One of the lower body days, it doesn't fucking matter which one. It does not matter. Have a glute and ham day. Right? So if you want to get through your heavy squats, light deadlifts, but you want some more glute and ham work, hit some RDLs, hit some glute bridges, hit some lying leg curls or some seated leg curls and get out, right? Have a chin day and a row day. I like that for most people. So on one of the upper body days, have kind of a horizontal pulling day and then a vertical pulling day. So on the heavy press day, light bench day, you could slap your chins in here or your rows. Kind of have to be careful with the heavy rows, heavy chins, because you're deadlifting the next day. So sometimes that back work can go on like the heavy deadlift day after the deadlifts, or it can go on this day as well. Just make sure to hit some type of row variation, some type of chin variation once a week. Arms and shoulders, you can fit in at some point as well on one of the upper body days. So again, it doesn't have to be anything crazy. 1 to 2 hard sets on the accessory work. By the time you're through your heavy barbell stuff, 1 to 2 hard sets on any accessories you choose is going to be plenty. When it comes to conditioning, that's always a question. Where do I fit my running in? I want to train for a marathon coach, all this bullshit that I like to do. Where do I fit jiu-jitsu in? Where do I do, where do I fucking play pickleball? I don't know. Off days are great for that. Lower body days as well. Honestly, any day that you can put that in there. I'm a firm believer that as long as you're not putting in like marathon mileage, a couple days of conditioning work, going out for a run, 3 to 5 miles, assault bike, sled pushing, playing pickleball for a few hours, rolling jiu-jitsu, that shouldn't take away from your training. And if it does, it's a very minuscule amount. So make that like a part of your baseline. So instead of being like, oh, it's taking away, like, okay, well, you're an athlete and this is the stuff that you do and this is your baseline level, and now we're going to use our training stress on top of that. Now, would you get as high from a strength perspective if you just shut all that down and only focus on training? You would get higher if you just shut it all down and focus on training. But for most people, the juice is not worth a squeeze on that. Like, don't quit the things that you like to do, or not do any conditioning work because you want to gain 10 more pounds on your PR after 12 months of training. Like, it doesn't make any sense. You need to be a well-rounded individual. especially after you've gone through an initial process of getting stronger. So if you've been training and you've committed to the process and you've done 6 to 12 months of consistent training, you've gotten your strength up really, really well, it is okay to add in conditioning work when you see fit. It's not going to take away from your training. And if running a couple miles or playing pickleball or rolling jiu-jitsu at dad noon lunch class 2 times a week ruins your lifting, I don't know what to tell you. Be tougher than that. Okay. A couple just like words of advice on this. Make sure that you are putting a big focus into lifting heavier loads over time. That is literally how you make progress in the gym. I see a ton of people that have been doing like a heavy light upper lower split, and they've been doing like the same rep range with the same weight for like months and months on end, and they haven't really looked to progress it at all. So don't be afraid to like keep it fresh. That's why I love things like the rep cycling and throwing in different variations and things like that. Like, don't get stuck in just doing heavy 5s perpetually. You don't have to do that anymore. You can, do some 4s, do some 7s, do some 2s, get weird, right? So overall, this is a great way to fit your training in. Just a couple other things to think about as well. I love how adaptable it is to like scheduling. I think I touched on that earlier in the video. But a lot of guys will go Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. But if shit happens, this can easily turn into Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday. This can easily turn into, shit, you got a long weekend trip planned. This can very easily, maybe like you just tack a couple sets off and you can go Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. If you've got travel over the weekend and you need to get reset. This can also be done if scheduling allows over 3 days. So Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. You see how that works? You can do that if it matches your schedule. And I've got some older lifters who can't quite recover that are able to do something like that, and it works out really, really well for them. So if you need any help setting this up for yourself, if you're tired of trying to figure out what reps to do, what sets to do, if your form looks good or not, get onto that application in my bio, go through, fill it out, I'll reach out to you, we'll get on a consultation call and we can get you started working with me one-on-one. That's going to progress you a lot faster than you trying to figure out how to fuck around and get this together yourself. All right? Thanks a lot.